Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, as Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords remains fighting for life in a Tucson hospital, we'll be asking whether vitriol and hatred in political debate have gone too far.
Christy! Megan! Christy! It's Aaron!
Plus, I'll be meeting Aaron Ralston, the rock climber. You remember that amazing story about his 127 hours of hell and how he finally escaped by cutting off his arm and doing that, of course, without an anaesthetic. It's a new blockbuster movie about his life, but he's here and we'll be talking about the real story there. And the controversial Zambian economist Dambisa Moyo is here too, we're delighted to report. But first, the internet. This weekend sees the 10th birthday of what has become one of the biggest success stories of the wired generation, Wikipedia. A decade ago, on the 15th of January 2001, the free online encyclopedia was launched. Its founder, Jimmy Wales, didn't expect fireworks. He's attributed with the quote that he was really only expecting complete rubbish. That was his anticipated outcome. But well, we'll find out about that in a minute. 10 years on, and Wikipedia is anything but complete rubbish. Instead, it has become an everyday and primary tool for understanding the world. And as part of those celebrations, Jimmy Wales is here with us right now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
10 years on.
Yes, it's amazing.
And it's gone better than you expected?
Yeah, it's been really amazing. From the beginning, I was always very, very optimistic. But I remember looking at a list of the top 100 websites and seeing reference style cited around number 50. And I thought, well, if we do a really great job, we could be in the top 100 or top 50. But now we're the 5th most popular website in the world. 400 million people a month come and visit. So it's become, really amazing and really part of the infrastructure of our world.
One of the key things that you've gone out strongly to raise money. Technically, the value of Wikipedia must be enormous technically, and yet you need cash, and that's because you don't take advertising, I suppose.
That's right. We're a charity, so we're set up as a nonprofit, and so we exist from donations to the general public, and our charitable mission is to give a free encyclopedia to everyone in the world.
Right. Well, that's what you've done. And do you ever wonder? Do you think that advertising would solve your financial difficulties, or do you think that advertising would in some way corrupt the operation?
Well, I think both, of course. Obviously, we could raise a lot of money through advertising, but it would really change the character of the site, and it would change the character of the organization in ways that nobody really wants. I think of Wikipedia as like a temple for the mind, or a national park, or a library. It's a place to go and learn and reflect and think and share ideas, not really a place for commerce.
Not for that. You advertised yourself. You were not paid for that. But I mean, you used your face in terms of getting the message across.
Yeah, it was.
You could use other famous supporters of yours, presumably.
Yeah, we may try that in the future. We did try this year several different faces. I was very reluctant to let the staff use my picture all over the website like that, but we did testing of banners, and that was the one that performed the best. We actually had a contest in the community, beat Jimmy. Can you come up with something that brings in more money? And my banner brought in the most, so we ran with that.
And how much did you raise from the whole appeal?
We raised $16 million, which
Right.
is the highest we've ever done, and we raised it in the shortest amount of time this year. So we did it in 50 days. Normally we go longer than that.
And so you might do that every year.
We might do, yeah. I mean, I hope we come up with something more clever so everybody doesn't have to get sick of looking at me all the time. But yes, I mean, we've had our annual fundraiser every December for several years now, and it's a model that works for us. We bring in enough money, and we're happy for the next year.
And what about in terms of moving on from here? Do you want to do anything new with the actual product, quite apart from advertising and so on? Is there something new you want to do with the actual Wikipedia?
Well, the biggest thing that we're looking at is our growth in the languages of the developing world.
Right.
We're in over 200 languages, but a lot of the languages are still quite small. So we're opening our first office outside the U.S. in India to assist the community there with the growth of the Indian language Wikipedias. We've got over 20 different projects there, and some of them are bigger and smaller than others, but they're really poised for a lot of growth.
And when you set up a new operation like India, how much do you have to write checks for, just to set it up in India. Big country.
Big country, but we're going to have a small office. We're not anticipating more than 3 or 4 people. Mostly that office is going to assist the local community because we're such a volunteer-driven organization that we always have loads and loads of local people who are getting organized and talking to the press and doing outreach and things like this. So it's not a super expensive thing. It's just a matter of putting some people on it full time to say, let's focus on what does the Indian language community need, how can we support.
We had a memorable visit with Julian Assange just a few weeks ago and so on. He went obviously for WikiLeaks. Did you feel he'd pinched 4 letters from you?
A little bit, yes, because WikiLeaks, the idea of a wiki is collaborative editing. It's a group of people getting together to write something together, whereas WikiLeaks is about getting documents and leaking them. It's really not a wiki. So if he had named it OpenLeaks, which I guess is a competitor of his now, nobody would be asking me about WikiLeaks all the time. But he called it WikiLeaks, so there we are.
Yeah. But in fact, if you'd had a say in it, you would have asked him to call it something else.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And is there anything new you're going to do with the product? Opening in India, we talked about that.
Yep,
5 centers and so on. What else is next?
Well, I think the other thing is we're looking at the usability of the website. We want to reach out to more women, to more people who are less tech savvy. Right now it's a bit still too technical when you try to edit Wikipedia. We want to make it more like a word processing interface anybody can do, and there's a whole host of technical improvements around that that people will start to see in the next year or 2.
That's very exciting. In the next year, how many people will use Wikipedia?
Oh, in the course of an entire year, I don't know. We measure it by months, so it's 400 million people a month. I would say, it's not always the same 400 million. I would say in the course of a year, it's probably 1 billion people. I'm not sure.
And will the collaborative element in the editing grow or retreat?
I think it'll grow. We have a very strong community. They're very passionate about Wikipedia. We're seeing really strong growth in Russian, for example, strong growth in the Indian languages. We're beginning to see some glimmerings of growth in some of the smaller languages in Africa. We have a very successful Swahili project. So all around the world, people are learning about Wikipedia and coming and building it in their own language.
Well, it's great to have you with us. I mentioned Julian Assange said, would you like him to stop? It's too late now, really, isn't it?
It's too late now.
It's Wiki.
Yeah, I mean, it would be fine
keeps.
if he wanted to change the name to something else so people would be clearer and make sure. We've just been trying to make really clear to people, whatever you think, positive, negative about WikiLeaks, has nothing to do with us. We're the encyclopedia people. So.
Well, we'll see where it goes from here.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed, and happy anniversary.
Yes, thank you for having me on. It's great.
Lovely. The latest film from Oscar-winning director Danny Boyle tells the extraordinary true story of Aaron Ralston, a young American mountaineer. Back in 2003, and you'll probably remember this story because it was unforgettable, a boulder fell onto Aaron's arm while he was climbing in a canyon. After 5 days trapped, his only means of escape, he decided, was to saw off his own arm and thus liberate himself from the boulder. We'll be speaking to Aaron in just a moment, but first of all, here's a clip from the film called 127 Hours because that's the length of time of the experience.
Christy! Megan! Christy! It's Aaron! Megan! Christy! Megan!
And he's here with us now. Aaron, welcome. Just seeing that scene again, who were you shouting to in that scene from the film?
Oh, the 2 young women that I had met earlier that day, just by happenstance, they were in the same canyon that I was in. Megan and Christy, they walked with me. I joined up with them for a few hours and then said goodbye as they were headed out of the canyon, and I continued down through a different section of the canyon, which is where then the accident happened when I became trapped.
And how exactly did you become trapped? And how long was it
I was
before you
in,
realized how trapped you were?
Well, it all happened very, very quickly. It was almost an instant. I was descending from a drop-off, and there was a boulder wedged in this very narrow canyon that I was dangling my body off of it to get down to the continuing canyon floor. And at the moment when I was fully extended from the rock, that I pulled it loose. It was falling. I was underneath it. And as I tumbled into the bottom of the canyon, I recovered my body enough to put my hands up and push off of the rock, as actually it was kind of ricocheting between the walls. And I got my head out of the way, but in that moment, the boulder just instantaneously crushed my left hand into the canyon wall. It rebounded, and then it crushed my right hand. And it became re-wedged between the walls of the canyon with my arm outstretched, almost like I was shaking hands with this about 800-pound rock. I knew just in the moment afterwards that this was terrible. I was in a great deal of trouble, that I was stuck. The boulder was immovable. And yet I spent about an hour trying to with the adrenalized kind of fury coursing through my veins to try to lift the rock or pull it towards me or just somehow make it move so that I could get my hand free.
And how long did it take before you realized that in terms of anything normal and not out of the ordinary, there was nothing you could do, that you basically were in a helpless situation? Did you realize that very quickly?
I knew about an hour after the boulder fell, which was about how long it took for me to finally get calmed down. I just exhausted myself trying to make the boulder move, and I wasn't able to do that. So at that moment then I realized I was in a great deal of trouble. I hadn't told anyone where I was going on this trip. I'd already said goodbye to the two people who were really the only other humans in this entire region. And as it was, I was on my own. I couldn't move, and I had just a very, very small amount of water. I had about a liter of water left, and that was when I knew, indeed, as you said, it was helpless. That I did in those moments then start to try to figure out how I could maybe get out of there, though, by perhaps amputating my arm. I didn't even want to think about that in that first day. But the other options I came up with, trying to chip away at the rock to remove my hand or to use my climbing equipment and rig a pulley system to lift the boulder, but all of those things failed. And finally, after 24 hours of being trapped and having gone through all of the options I had, that I knew at that point I was not going to survive, and I indeed turned my video camera on and started to record what became my last will and testament. It was my goodbyes to my family, to say, Mom, Dad, I love you. I'm sorry for what I've gotten myself into here. I wish that I, in some ways, had appreciated you more in my heart. And those were my regrets as I faced my death.
And you communicated those, and how long did you record of your words to your parents and your loved ones?
Well, it was only a few minutes at a time, spread out over the course of the days that I was there. I would turn that camera on when I was feeling particularly low and despairing, because what it could do was just, even through that lens, I was able to bring my family into the canyon with me so that they were there. And I would reflect about happy memories from our past, of my childhood, or about my best friends, and but even just saying these people's names and talking to my sister Sonia, that it was like I could bring them to be with me, and I would feel that, I guess, that love, the connection of them in my life, and it gave me strength to even to persevere while I was there.
God, you needed that strength too. And how far into the 127 hours, which is also from the title of the film, but the 127 hours you were there, how far into that did you decide there's only one thing I can do. Shall I do it? Yes, I will do it. How far into the 127 hours did you effectively start on this solution?
Well, the first time I had the idea, as I mentioned, an hour into the entrapment, I didn't even want to think about it. So at a full day later, that I began to consider and really think through, I think very objectively, what were my chances, what were my odds. If I could get free, that where would I go? And I started to make a plan. I would need a tourniquet. And yet I still figured that it was almost 8 hours to get to my vehicle and to drive to medical assistance, maybe 10 hours. So I was certainly not in a good position to be able to just escape the canyon and get to a hospital. That meant it just didn't make sense. It wasn't going to work for me. Logic aside, then, by the second day, the third day, I became more and more desperate. I was going to die anyway, so why not at least try? I took the knife on the third day and I tried to cut into my arm, but by that point it was so dull from chipping away at the boulder, trying to excavate my hand, I dulled it on the rock, so it wouldn't even cut the hairs on my skin. I set the knife down, and it was a day later than the fourth day when I picked the knife up and realized that if I held it like a dagger, I would actually be able to stab myself. And I was able to successfully break the skin on that fourth day. But again, there was, with this minor triumph as it is, I still realized that the bones were prohibitively difficult. I would never be able to cut through them in order to get free. So in the last days that I was there, it was almost like it wasn't the boulder that was trapping me or a lack of resolve to do what I needed to do, but rather it was the knife, that it was too pathetically dull to cut through the bones. In the very final moment then, or actually the last of those 127 hours, I was finally given an epiphany that I could use the boulder itself and the leverage that it would be able to give me to bend my arm to where I could actually snap the bones. As I did that, I was smiling, and you see James Franco as he portrays that episode of my experience there, and he cackles with this almost maniacal laughter because it's a triumph. It is a real victory then to be getting free. It doesn't guarantee that I'm going to live, but at least I'm not going to die in that place.
And so that it was breaking bones that was important, and then the knife then came into force after that, did it again, to get through the flesh?
Exactly. It was the shorter of the two blades on this multi-tool knife that I had, that I used this just 1 inch long blade to, after both the bones were broken, that I was able to use that little blade and cut through all the other various parts of my arm, most of which were actually not that painful until I got to the nerve. And then when I had to sever that nerve, it was the most intense sensation that I've ever had in my life. It felt like I vaporized my arm up to my shoulder in this incinerating fire of pain. And yet, even as that subsided within the next 30 seconds, never crying or shouting out in that pain, but yet I began to smile again because I'd made it through the crux and I was going to get out of there, and maybe someday I'd even get to see my family, or in the future to perhaps have a family of my own. And as it worked, the thoughts of this envisioned little boy, a son, maybe about 3 years old, blonde hair and a red shirt, that I saw a vision of a child in the canyon where I was trapped, and he actually has come into my life today. He's now 11 months old. His name is Leo, and my wife and I are very blessed that this actual manifestation of hope and of courage and of strength is here for us in our lives.
Did you actually, through that 127 hours, maintain hope, or did you have periods of despair?
I definitely despaired, and the times when I felt most hopeful were when I thought about my family and how much I was appreciative of them, my gratitude for them. it showed me a lesson that life is more than just the accomplishments that we might have accumulated, but it's really about the relationships and how we treat people, how we respect them and love them, especially those closest to us. That's what's most important. It gave me the strength that then lifted me up from those despairing moments. I would also feel great hopefulness when I was able to take action for myself, that it was indeed I guess a final sense of peace almost, though, on the 5th day when I had exhausted all of my options, and I realized that it was as much as that it was in God's hands. It was no longer just up to me. I wasn't going to determine whether I was going to get out of that canyon or not, and it was there that I really actually accepted that I would die, and that was okay. But I was re-given hope again and took to action. And I think that that's perhaps another lesson in life, that there are times when the resistance is just going to frustrate us, and so acceptance is one key to serenity or peace. And then there are other times where taking action for ourselves or on behalf of others, that's actually how we can move forward and create a new circumstance for us.
So is that, when you give motivational speeches and things like that, is that the message? Is there a slogan, a phrase, a text, a verse that you use?
Well, there are definitely many that I share with people, because I mean, this entire experience has been a gift of those kinds of lessons. That for me, the lesson that it's not just what you do in life that's important, it's who you are and how you relate, how we interact and love each other. That's really, I think, our purpose in life. I also think that in a sense then that this experience, as it was with the rock and this boulder, that it was a blessing. And maybe that is a slogan of sorts, that our boulders can be our blessings in life, that they can be gifts for us to grow. Epiphany does not exactly equal transformation. I mean, you have to really work, and sometimes it can be a struggle. But there is something that's there that can be made beautiful out of even the darkest of times.
And I suppose there's the added thought that it is important also to remember, when you're going on an exploration, to leave a note behind to say where the hell you're going.
Only if you want someone to come and look for you. But, yeah.
But if you're trying to get away from the world, you were doing it in the right way. Thank you very much. That story is such an unforgettable story, and I hope you never have any horrendous experiences like that again. But we wish you well, and thank you. Thanks a million.
Thank you very much. It was an honor. Thank you.
What an amazing story. After this short break, we'll be discussing the shootings in Arizona, with 6 people dead and Congresswoman Giffords still in a dangerous state in hospital. Many American observers are asking whether vitriolic language has gone too far in US politics. And is the problem confined to the United States anyway? Find out in a minute.